I think we'll go. Does that sound? I think we should do it.
All right.
Hello.
Let's do it. Is my mic on? Or am I just louder than my own mic? Yeah, I think that's part of it. Okay.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. My name is Amanda Hiron-Murphy. I'm a curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Arlington. Today, we're in the annex. We're here at the Innovation Studio for an artist talk with David Amoroso, who, just out of curiosity, a show of hands, how many of you are fans of David's work in this audience? Fantastic. I know that David is a beloved Arlington artist, and it's nice because today we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about your background and how you do what you do, not only to this group here, but broadly in the virtual universe. So hello, everybody online. So today's talk will probably run about 30, 40 minutes. We'll definitely leave time for Q&A afterwards, and we'll just jump right in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read your bio to begin. David Amoroso shows his admiration for Latin culture through his artwork. His artistic passion is divided between painting, photography, and block screen prints. Although the majority of David's work is dedicated to painting iconic portraits of everyday people, he also represents Mexican pop culture through his work. His involvement with the Latino community has allowed him to create Mexican altars for Dia de los Muertos and Guatemalan alfombras de acerrín. His art has brought him to exhibit and work in the DC metro area, California, Arizona, North Carolina, Mexico, Central, and South America. So I wasn't sure if I was going to lead with this, but I think we're going to just go there. Yes, here we go. So one thing that struck me as we got to talking to each other, and even hearing some of the conversations you've had here today, I think people are so amazed at the number of things that you've done and the many hats that you've worn as an artist. You've lived many lives, one could say. And so kind of building off of that, I want us to definitely go back, look at your childhood and how that may have influenced what you're making here. I want to read a bio that you had included in a previous exhibition that kind of opens the door a little bit about you personally. So This says here, whether feeling displaced from a culture while assimilating to a new one, or feeling consumed by daily life, and this is a show you were doing for Dia de los Muertos, I assume, and pondering what the afterlife may hold for you, these paintings are intended to capture the energy, images, and nostalgia of two worlds I am drawn to. I was adopted as a baby in the United States and have no knowledge of my actual origin. Even as a child, I felt misplaced because I felt no connection to the people who adopted me or the life I was living. It wasn't until I traveled to Mexico, Guatemala, and El Salvador that I finally felt at home and grounded for the first time in my life. So building off of this, I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about that background, those early childhood years, where you grew up, and when, potentially even in the earliest stages of your life, you knew you wanted to become an artist.
Okay, I may need some prompting through this.
Sure, no problem.
It's a long question. I mean, I think being adopted, after talking with Amanda for the last few days and thinking about it, I've decided it's been my superpower in a way that I don't think I ever realized up until just recently. I think being told that I was adopted as a kid was actually a relief, because I would look at those crazy people around me and be like, even at a very young age, thank God I don't have their blood coming through my body. And of course, it's true.
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't realize that environment also shapes us. So stuff was done, things happened. But I think I always felt freedom in that I didn't have that tie where I had to please or meet expectations, because I just think I felt very independent. And throughout my life, that allowed me to explore photography, music, painting, whatever it may be, and not feel like it would be a disappointment to other people, because I didn't care. And so I think that's really helped me in a very positive way, because I've seen so many people struggle. Well, I want to be an artist, but my family doesn't like this, or I want to do that, but my family. And I feel liberated not having that. Yeah. And so that's definitely been, I think, a gift. And I think all the hard work that goes into this, or music, or anything we do, I think being adopted helped me in the sense I didn't feel like I had like the backing, like I had no fallback. I had no other choice. I either had to be successful at it or move to whatever the next thing may be. And so I think that gave me a lot of resilience, because failure or whatever it may be called just wasn't an option. I got to keep doing it.
I also remember reading an interview with you where you said that you spent a lot of time watching TV as a kid. Is that true?
Too much, yeah. And I think that was one of the first clues that let me know the house I was in maybe wasn't quite normal. You just watch the TV families, which are always very fake. But to me, it seemed like, okay, that makes more sense. Maybe that's the way things should be, even if they weren't like that, throughout most houses. But again, it was sort of a point of reference. So, TV was definitely an escape, as was music. Back in the day, I had my 45s and, listening to all that.
I was also thinking just like the commercial quality, we'll talk about this also, but the commercial quality of the work, and also like just being familiar with stars and what they mean and having like a relationship with them. I wonder if the TV at all influenced that as well, subject matter wise.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Aesthetically, I imagine.
Definitely aesthetically, yeah. I mean, you look at the sets of these old shows from the 70s, just the color, we'll talk about color later on, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Just the colors, I think, were just so over the top and saturated. I think that impacts the way I paint today, definitely.
And then how about the moment that you knew you were going to be an artist of some stripe? Was there a time, or is it just something you were always doing?
I don't think I ever really thought about it in those terms. I think I just always did stuff. I'm not the kind of person that likes job titles or titles like that. And so, when people ask, often I'll just say, well, I paint, or I'm a painter. And half the times people say, oh, I want to do my house, or I want to do, a room like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's usually not that kind of painting, but maybe. So I don't know. I think there's sometimes a pretension to that. I'm an artist. I think the people that look at your art decide that for themselves. So I would rather under-promise and over-deliver, maybe.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, so before you paint, you have many different legs to the work that you make. Not only do you paint, you make block prints, but you also have an extensive background as a photographer. And when we were speaking earlier, I remember you saying that travel and photography in Latin America is part of what made you fall in love with that part of the world. And I just wonder if you could talk a bit about that chapter of your life.
That, I think I always joke, I went to Mexico as a photographer and came back a painter, even though I hadn't painted anything yet. But looking at the pictures I had taken, I felt like they looked great, but they weren't as magical as the experience had been for me. And I didn't have like the technology experience to go into photos and and play with them and add to them, I figured, well, maybe it's easier just to paint them. And so I started painting, and I ultimately just wanted to create one painting that sort of summarized all the different experiences I'd had. And then all of a sudden I had about a dozen paintings and nowhere to put them, and somebody said, oh, you should exhibit them. And oddly enough, I took them to El Tamarindo, a Salvadoran restaurant in DC, and hung up some work, and like half of it sold at the reception. So it's like, okay, this is easy. And then that never happens again like that, But your friends only buy once, right? But it just sort of made me think, oh, this is a possibility. Yeah. A company I'd worked for had gone out of business, and I was like, oh, okay, let me do some more painting for a while. And then I got to take an exhibit to El Salvador. And again, oh, Delta's going to sponsor it and fly my work and everybody out there. And I'm like, oh, this is easy. No. It was just lucky that I knew somebody who knew somebody, and Delta started offering flights to El Salvador, and it lined up.
And what was it about painting specifically that really stuck with you in a way that photography hadn't? Was there something about making it, the feeling of making it?
I think I was able to perfect the photos or tweak them. Again, I didn't know Photoshop or any of that stuff. So I think as I painted, I was able to either fix the photo or adjust it to what I would like. And then from there, I think it became more of a passion to paint. I mean, I'd never really thought of painting up until that moment. I mean, as a kid in school, I enjoyed all the classes you would have and things you'd get to do, but it didn't seem like something I would pursue.
Interesting. And so you always, when you paint, I'm assuming you're almost always working from photos. Is that true?
Usually.
Okay.
It's kind of, I think, doing a photo montage in my brain is sort of one of the first steps. If I see an image I like, I'll think about how I want to frame that within the canvas. And honestly, doing so much photography really helped me to frame up images within a canvas in a way where I think the compositions are usually strong. Then from there, I sort of mentally add other elements like, the design in the background, or I'll start playing with, adding different colors to it if I think that's what's needed.
And I remember when we were talking about your photos, you were primarily a portrait photographer, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So were the photos that you were taking in Latin America of people mostly, or were they also landscapes, that kind of thing?
It was mostly things, some people, but things. And I think some of my first paintings, I'm not going to say they were scenery or scenic, but I think everybody paints their doors and windows series at some point. So there were a few of those that were popping up, and I was a little obsessed with the way, the paint would wear off a wall and reveal another color and then another color. And it was just beautiful in its own decay. And so I think, it started there. And from then, I guess at that point, I started doing some Frida paintings, and that sort of inspired me to do other portraits. And a lot of the portraits I've done more recently that weren't based off, photos I found online or photos that have been shared with me, are based off photos I'd taken. Like, for example, in the back, the guy with the white background there, Pascual, he's a friend of mine that we used to work on the Guatemalan alfombras de acerrín, the sawdust carpets. And I said, hey, let me photograph you. And, he really came to life on film. And so I used that image and then mixed it with a retro wallpaper or fabric design. So mixing those two together, to me, I think was sort of, They're some of my favorite paintings because I feel like I'm using people I know, I'm using my photos, and then I'm choosing these old designs to juxtapose over the people. And I've done a whole series of work like that. And most of the guys have tattoos, but I never paint their tattoos. But the tattoos are implied by the designs going over them. And I think that's kind of cool. I had done something at the Hill Center, and some person came up and said, "Oh, I saw your paintings of all the guys with tattoos." And I said, "Oh, which one are you talking about?" And so we went back, all the guys with the tattoos. And she actually had seen another guy at the opening reception that was covered with tattoos that I hadn't photographed, and said, like him, he's one of them, right? And so we go back, and it's like, where are the tattoos? And she goes, oh. So I like that it has the tattoo attitude, because that's kind of what I wanted. And I love that there's like the background, there's the foreground, and the person sort of stays in the middle. I don't know what it says, but I like painting them, and I think it's just maybe the juxtaposition of the machismo posturing, and then
with the flowers,
ancient. It's maybe on somebody's sofa, those prints. I don't know.
I definitely think the first artistic influence that most people probably see when they look at your work is Andy Warhol. And, or at least that's what I immediately thought of when I saw your work, of course. Not only because and maybe you can tell the story first about the Goya beans, because there's an apocryphal story about how a painting of a can of Goya beans became like the catalyst for perhaps painting other products that are associated with Latin America. Is that?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, okay.
No, I had done an exhibit, and I was just choosing subject matters, and I think if I had thought of the possibility of doing advertising, artwork, and design, if that had occurred to me as an option way back when, that's probably the direction I may have gone. But I've always loved like vintage designs and retro, and so many Latino products, the packaging didn't change much until the last maybe 15 years. And so I had seen this beautiful can of Goya beans, with the little yellow bowl and blue background, and the brightly, pink rosadas, those beans, and habichuelas rosadas, and then the frijoles negros, the black beans, and the can was so beautiful, and I just felt like I want to paint it, and so I painted it without even thinking of Warhol. And I'd been familiar with Warhol, but I just painted it because it was beautiful. And then somebody goes, "Looks like Warhol went to Mexico or something." And I'm like, oh. And I think that just made me look more closely at other products like the Jarrito soda. And we proudly celebrate 75 years. It's their anniversary, so yay, Jarritos.
Yay, Jarritos. There's Jarritos in the back for anybody who wants it. We had to be on brand for the snacks for the talk.
Yeah.
But there's the aesthetic quality of Warhol, but then there's also the kind of commentary that it seems like he was making by making product and selling painting as product. And I wonder if that is all an influence on you in addition to like the look of things.
I don't think I really think of it that way. I mean, I'm very productive, so I make more than I can sell, which I don't know. How do we fix that, right?
Clearance sale.
Clearance sale.
That's true. This is the time.
We'll apply that discount code today. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, the mass-produced work I do is still very handmade. I don't use silk screens for the most part. It's all hand-cut block prints, so they're all done one by one. Like if you look at these little block prints here, all the colors are hand-painted versus screened. And so I think there's this part of me that's just very tactile. I love the way things either align or misalign, and by painting everyone by hand, you're guaranteed mistakes. When I'm doing a painting like this, I don't allow myself that freedom, and I was talking to some people earlier about having to go back now and paint all the white details to make sure that the pencil lines don't show, which will be a total nightmare. But when it comes to these small ones where I'm, capitalizing on, poor alignment and mistakes like that, I think everything is more beautiful because of it.
Nice.
So,
Yeah, that's nice to hear. That's great. So this is my cue the images virtually question, but you've painted everything from these recognizable, beloved food products from Latin America to recognizable Mexican figures in art and music, like Frida Kahlo. So I was wondering how you choose your subjects.
I think it's mostly based on the images I find. I mean, well, first there's a connection to the artist, like, watching, old black and white films from Mexico, Cantinflas. He was such an amazing character. I hate to say Mexico's Jerry Lewis. I don't think that does him justice, but I think the fact that he made so many movies and he was always hilarious and just gifted with words and language, I just think, he caught my attention. You watch a few of those movies, and the storytelling is just so interesting. And I think the golden age of cinema in Mexico, it was just, I'm going to say, so intimate from a standpoint of you really felt the characters and the development, and you really felt the story. And so I think those stories really resonated. And, because I loved that film, I want to paint this person. The movies of Pedro Infante, I mean, he was, again, I hate to compare him to somebody like Elvis, but, he made, I don't know how many movies and released how many CDs per year. And he was just the everyman of Mexico, but also the person that all the women swooned for. So he was just, just so powerful when you think of it from a cultural standpoint. So, painting people like that, sometimes I feel like in this country, it's a best kept secret. A lot of people don't know, and I'm always thrilled when somebody goes, I'm going to go look for one of his movies, or I'm going to go find this, So.
I love that. It just occurred to me that, yes, you are serving as a kind of ambassador for Mexican culture, and to be honest,
Que viva la raza!
I'm less familiar with Mexican cinema, so this is a wonderful tutorial, and maybe there needs to be a future program of David Amoroso curates a series of Mexican films. So TBD, we'll see how that goes. Yeah, that's interesting. So do you feel like you also kind of function as a bridge in some cases for the culture? Like, can you give an example of a time that's happened? Or?
Well, it just happened now, right?
Yeah.
I think, it's weird. I'll do a shout out for my adoptive mother. If she found something she liked, she wouldn't shut up about it. Like back in the early 70s, she discovered Pringles. And she wouldn't shut up until she talked to every store she could until Procter & Gamble would get it down there. She did the same thing for Mash's hams.
Wow.
And it's so random, but she was relentless. And so that was the I didn't have the blood, but the environmental rub-off. If I see something I like, I just like to promote it, and I won't shut up about it. So I guess thanks, Mom. Wherever you may be resting.
So you've been a photographer. You are a photographer. Do you still do photography?
Some,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. And then, of course, there's this practice, and you were also in a band.
Yeah.
You were a front man.
Yeah.
Is that right? Can you tell us the name of the band?
There were a lot.
Oh, several bands.
Yeah,
okay.
it switched. We were first Schadenfreude.
Okay.
It's a fun name. And it was sort of alternative goth rock, all original music, so it was a lot of fun. Had a lot more black hair back then. And then when that crashed, we started up again as, I can't even remember some of the names, but Inside Out was sort of one of the bigger ones, and then Glamour Kitty. And I think one thing about, if anybody's been in a band, it's like being married to somebody. And I can't imagine anything worse than being married to 5 people who you may love on one level but don't like at all. And I think as we were about to take a big step which was a big trip. And it ended with the police wrestling the guitarist to the ground and all that. I was just like, I'm done. I wrote a great song out of it, but you know, that was just sort of it. So I don't know. I mean, it's just like it's one of those things where, like, I think sometimes I look back and it's like, was that my life? And if I didn't know people that were also back then, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know that I would believe some of it, or, I mean, I need people to remind me of things too. I just realized as I was trying to, after talking about all this stuff, I'm trying to put my own timeline together, and I realized there was a time where I guess I was homeless, but I didn't really know it, and I was living with a Cuban family. And
Okay.
they took me in like that. And
Amazing.
regaled me with stories about, oh, when we first came to Florida, we had to, you know, here's how we got by and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, the mother has passed, the abuelita has passed, and then my dear friend passed as well a few years ago. And so these things, like, I'm trying to remember, how did it even happen? Like, did I come over and say, hey, I need a place to live? Did you invite me? Like, how did anybody know? I don't know.
I think that, like, getting to know you and talk to you, I see all of these threads connecting in the work, places that you felt at home, cultures that you really identified, people who took you in, people that may have, you know, taught you something about the culture, and then also this frontman energy that you innately possess.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's true. You have such interesting stories. You have such a presence. So I think that it all comes to bear. Also, up until yesterday, there were 4 paintings of band members in here, or musicians, right?
Yeah.
And so,
not band members.
not band members, not
They're
band
all my
members. That's right,
exes
not the
by
5.
right. Yeah, divorced. No more band members. No.
So you also have music is very important to you as
yeah.
well. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about what role it plays, and are you working through a series currently of musicians, or?
I think I've done a lot of musician portraits over the years. They're always very popular, so I do get requests. I just finished a portrait of Kurt Cobain for a client that's purchased several of my other paintings, and it's great to work with him. He's like, just do whatever you want, you know, just make it look cool. And so, you know, that's awesome. I can share a picture later on if you want. But you know, I love music. I grew up on it. It means a lot to me. So, you know, it's always like the soundtrack. You know, people have asked, oh, what's your favorite album? It depends on the minute. But while I'm painting, I've got this like 1990 something or 80 something multi-disc CD player, and I've got my 6 discs rotating throughout it at all times, and I've got a roommate that says I need to change the discs more frequently. Which is pretty sad. That shows how many times they're playing through. If somebody's like 6 discs, too much. So yeah, I've got this great CD collection. You know, I should probably do Spotify, but what am I gonna do?
You
with
like the
all this
objects.
plastic?
The objects, yeah.
What am I gonna do with the plastic? So.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears really quickly to this last question that I have, but a lot of other things have come up naturally through this conversation, so I'm sure they'll come up. So you, with such a deep relationship with Latin American culture, I feel like there's an undeniable political bent potentially to the work. And I'm thinking about this series that you did, the Belleza Brutal, so the portrait of the gentleman that we see with his back to us with the florals. And then you said during our conversation that sometimes paintings resurface and are asked for exhibitions, and they take on a new meaning. And I think especially at the time that we're living currently, it's very visible. So I wondered if you could talk about that political aspect to your work.
I think in the early 2000s, you know, I had just been painting for a few years, but there were a lot of protests during that presidential era. All the raids that were happening, friends were being deported, you know, all those things happening. You know, I found myself taking pictures at all these events and protests, and then looking at the pictures, I felt like some of them had other merit, and that's when I began to paint from those pictures. And it's strange, you know, you think back and you always want to believe that, you know, the power of protest, awareness, things get better. you feel like you take a few steps forward, and then those steps are wiped away. And some of the issues that were covered then, I've gone back to some of those paintings and tweaked a little bit, and it's amazing how they remain relevant, unfortunately. And so I have been invited to participate in an exhibit in Rockville that's basically a protest exhibit. But I find myself wondering, about the pieces I've selected. Does it put people at risk, people I know personally? And so, it's not something I feel like I've ever had to consider before. And so, definitely.
Yeah, we're in a new moment.
Yeah, I thought like during the pandemic, it's a new moment. We keep finding new moments, right?
Yeah, for sure. Last question for me, and then I think we can open it up. So, the role of community in your work, communities that you feel a part of, and even the way that people interact with your work, what role does that play? How do you think about community in your work?
Give me a hint. I just feel like everything I do somehow either connects me to a community or is because of a community I may be connected to.
Got it.
Was that sort of where you were thinking?
Yeah.
Or is there
or just how you think
something
about
more
people.
profound?
No. I mean, just how people interact with your work and the way that. I mean, I almost feel as though as you found yourself at home within the Latin community, it sort of sparked a series of recognizable objects that you could then kind of be that ambassador for potentially two different groups of people, And I don't know whether or not you find when you have openings that you're merging worlds also. Does that ever happen in your shows?
I think it always happens. I just don't. It's kind of, it feels so normal that I don't think about it. And here, it's amazing how many people walk through these doors, and I'll hear them speaking Spanish, and then they're shocked. It's like, hey, buenos dias, ¿qué tal? Pasan, and they're sort of a little surprised to be welcomed in Spanish. I think immediately they'll look at the art and see, oh, wow, So I think there's that connection, but there's so many different people that walk through these doors on a daily basis, Tuesday through Saturday. I want to say daily, and I keep thinking, oh, wait, it's closed on Monday and Sunday. But it's just interesting to see how curious people are and how many questions people ask. And, people are happy to have a space like this where it is very diverse. I mean, I've had ties to MOCA and the Arlington Arts Center for close to 20 years now, and it was I didn't know what to expect, but just the traffic, the people, talking to, I didn't think I would interact so much with the people here, and it's not that I didn't want to, I just didn't know if people wanted to. And so I'll be painting and people will ask questions, or, when there are a bunch of kids, I'll put the canvas on the floor and start painting on the floor, and the kids come over.
That's
Sometimes
so nice.
they think they want to walk on the canvas. Sold. But it's a lot of fun, and it's just refreshing. Because I think this is sort of like a haven and a refuge from the world outside. Amazon employees will come down and hear, people walking the street, and they'll just like, can I color or paint or something? And so, I think art in general, music, whatever it may be, is about connecting. And so, when it happens, I guess it should have, right? Or it needs to, or it's expected.
And you create it. Like, you're such an important catalyst for that. So it's really nice to see that happen. Few more small things. So what do you have in the pipelines coming up? I know that you're going to be at the Innovation Studio as the artist in residence for a little bit longer. Could you give us the dates?
I've been extended. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Woo-hoo! Yeah. I'll be here till the end of September.
Fantastic.
So I get a few extra weeks here. Thank you, Katie. I've got an exhibit I co-curated that's going up at the Art Factory in Manassas in about a week and a half. This other exhibit, the protest one, going up in Rockville. somebody asked me to art all night. Should I do it or not? Because it just doesn't seem exciting to do art all night in DC these days, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, art all night. I'm trying to,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
I don't want that to impact, but at the same time, I don't think people feel as comfortable walking around and
Sure.
doing that. Richmond, I'll be at the Martin Agency doing an exhibit out there mid-September. Other stuff too.
And the Dia de los Muertos.
Oh,
I
well,
assume.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Dia de los
good.
Muertos, we're going to do that. Falls on a Saturday, so we'll be at the original MOCA for that, as we have been for almost, 20? Did we decide last year was 20 or? So 21 years. Gosh,
Amazing.
yeah. And so
That's great.
I'll be at the Smithsonian during the day on Saturday and Sunday as well, so got to figure out how to get something that can go up very quickly. So, but that's the fun part, being able to do that, is just come up with a new way to solve the situation.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think we'll go ahead and open up the floor to any questions.
Hi.
Oh, there's a mic here also, so we can hear your questions in the video later too. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I think,
I
yeah.
do.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Hi, I'm Christina Montoya, and I just have a question for you. What city in Mexico would you say inspired you the most?
I think it depends on where I'm left by the bus.
Oh,
You know, I mean, Mexico was probably the first place that made me feel like public transport can really work, you know? And so, like, you know, I'd arrive in Mexico City, which is amazing, hop on, you know, la Flecha Amarilla, you know, the yellow arrow bus, and just go, you know, now I'm in Puebla, now I'm going to, you know, Guadalajara, now I'm going to Chiapas, or San Cristobal. So all these different cities, they are unique. I mean, it's one country, but each state, I mean, you see different colors. The way the light hits the buildings. I mean, I'm all about the light with the photography, but you know, every city I think is so unique. You know, Cuernavaca. So, how do you answer a favorite? I mean, San Miguel de Allende, you know, was, you know, 30 years ago, my dream city. As time's gone on, when I saw the first Starbucks pop up, I'm like, maybe it's not for me anymore. But yeah, what's your favorite?
I was hoping you would say Cuernavaca.
Okay, see, I got there. Yeah, el Azul Colonial. You know, it sort of stands out in my mind from a photographic standpoint, because I took this beautiful picture of a portion of a wall with a curved door. The door was Azul Colonial, and the other one was like this deep burnt orangish color, and it just, yeah.
great. More questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, in the back.
Hi, afternoon. My name is Andrew. You mentioned that through your work you find yourself being a sort of ambassador of Mexico and Latin America. When you're traveling or doing exhibitions in Latin America, do you ever find yourself or aspects of your work acting as an ambassador for the United States?
No. No. I've found, like, when I'm traveling, I go very low key and I just try to blend in and observe and, you know, talk to people. You know, I'm often asked about the United States, and it's usually, what the hell's going on? Things like that, or similar things. So I don't, yeah.
And like, I guess, kind of building off this question.
I've never been asked anything like
Yeah.
that.
Well, I'm wondering about your artistic influences aside from subject matter. Like aesthetically, is there something that you are drawn to? I mean, I mentioned Andy Warhol, but I don't know if there's anybody else that you're looking at. He's an American, right? So
Yeah. As I first started doing like those retro designs with the portraits, I became aware of Kehinde Wiley, who paints on a whole other level. This is definitely D-list stuff compared to the A+ stuff he does. But it's a different approach. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I marvel at it. I don't love that he has shops where hundreds of people are painting for him. I thought he was doing it all himself, and that's why I'm like, wow, you know, this is awesome. And without a doubt, I know he started off painting all his own stuff.
Right.
But as time's gone on, I can't imagine ever letting anybody else do something like that. Not that anybody's offered. Some of the kids that come here, I know they would. I know they got me back. They would. But I don't know.
It might send you back to your band days, so probably
Yeah,
not a
yeah,
good
yeah,
idea.
you never know.
But you know what's interesting is that like that's a very kind of Warholian thing to have like the factory of, or you know, it's probably back to the Renaissance even, but a team of people that make things in the style of. But you're very anti that, so it's interesting.
Yeah, if I ever become pro that, somebody come slap me or something. 'Cause, yeah, I just feel like if something's supposed to be handmade or hand done, it needs to be done by the hands of the person. I can appreciate that somebody has the vision, you know, of what they have to plan it out so thoroughly that they can enlist other able artists to carry it out beautifully, but it seems different to me.
Well, I also wonder about, you know, I was thinking about posters for luchadores and like this really bright kind of graphic style that they may have. I just came back from Oaxaca. So I know there's a really strong tradition of graphic arts in Oaxaca. Is there anything specifically from Mexico, perhaps, that has visually influenced you in that regard? Hand-painted signs, you know?
Definitely street art. I mean, you know, the buildings that are painted, like people on the cinder block buildings, there's so many times the logo for the business is painted on the wall. So that kind of artwork is fascinating, sometimes horrifying. There's a book called Sensacional that was put out, and it was just a little like square book that highlighted some of the best and worst art like that, and it's fascinating. I mean, it's kind of like the original outsider art. You can see it at the Visionary Museum.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful
Yeah.
in its own unique way.
Yeah, I can totally relate to this, actually. I think it's like an unspoken thing that draws me back to Mexico repeatedly, even as a visitor, is everything has this real sensuous tactility to it. Things are made by hand. There's like a different kind of engagement with the senses than we get in a very sort of mechanized culture that we have here, where you pick up everything seamlessly and, you know, go along your day. And there's like going to messy markets with fantastic smells, sometimes horrible smells, but it's all just like this wonderful sensory overload.
And it's funny because like when I'm there, like if I'm buying, you know, hand-painted art that was carved out of wood, I always want to get the Virgin who maybe has her eyes crossed, or the, you know, the lopsided devil ears or horns or whatever. I mean, I'm buying these figures that I want the weirdest one they have. You know, that to me says more than, ooh, you know, the most, perfect one. So.
Yes.
Talk about your experience here at the Innovation Studio. When people come in, are they trying to replicate your art, or is it a jumping off point for their own art?
We have some projects that I've come up with that are being worked on daily. When, you know, kids come in, we did a watercolor project out in the park a few weeks ago. And then there's a technique called papel mate, where it's bark paper that's hand painted on, and there are these elaborate designs. They're usually animals and nature scenes, and we found a way to sort of recreate that on brown cardstock paper. So it's got the black lines, and the kids are painting them in with chalk markers. Huh?
Ink chalk.
Ink chalk? Is that what it's called? Okay, yeah, chalk something. Yeah, it's an amazing thing, whatever it is, be it chalk, paint, marker, whatever, because the brushes are hard to use sometimes, and being able to use those paint markers, you can go in and do your details, and it makes it a lot easier. The colors are opaque, so that's been a beautiful discovery. But more often than not, kids are here, they want to create, they want to do their own thing. The grown-ups are a little bit more conformist because we feel like we have to sometimes, I guess. But the kids want to do their own thing, and so that's awesome. And we've got one kid that keeps coming. I don't even know how she knew what my name was. She probably can read, but she's like, David! and I'm like, that's my name, but did I understand it? I mean, did the kid really say David? And then maybe it's her brother or something. And then she said it again and looked at me, and it's like, oh, okay. And so I went over, and she just wanted to show me what she was doing, and we came up with some other ideas of things she could do, and it was fun. So a young couple was in here before we started setting up, and they were just doing watercolors on that same brown paper, and people do what they want.
That's lovely.
And
There's another question back there, yeah?
Hi, I'm Miriam. I'm curious what your self-portrait looks like, and if it has interesting designs, with the colors and symbols and stuff too.
I don't know if in the slides there was a self-portrait.
I don't think I included one.
Oh, okay.
So, but is there one?
There's one. There was one that I did for Dia de los Muertos, where
Yes.
actually, Charlotte, I think you took the picture of that, my friend Charlotte. Hey, yeah, she took a picture of me with my arms folded. I can't remember why, whether I went there with that specific idea that I needed this picture, and then I used that as the foundation for painting a Dia de los Muertos face and covering my clothes with bones, and
Oh, cool.
I had these dark, ominous clouds in the sky behind me, and I think I had a scorpion on one clavicle and a dragonfly on the other, and it was called The Delicate Balance.
Ooh.
And it was used to promote the Dia de los Muertos event probably about 18 years ago. So it exists, yeah.
There's also one of you, isn't it, on your website? Next to your bio? Is that you? Looks like you.
Is it a painting of me?
It's a mariachi with a bullet in its head.
Oh, that, yeah.
Oh.
Now, Mexico's got a very dark sense of
Sure.
humor. And I'm glad y'all laughed, because that's hilarious, right? But it was sort of a play on transitioning out of the world of music, and
interesting.
sort of welcoming myself to art. I can't even remember when I did it, but it was basically a picture of me slumped over with a bullet hole in my head, and the title of it was "They Did Not Like My Song."
Ah.
Because sometimes I've heard, that stuff like that does happen if they don't like your song. And so it just seemed like it was the final goodbye to my music world, and fun.
Yeah, well, so many different Davids. It's
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Some
Yeah.
of them are still here.
Some of them are still here. They're all still here. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, there's so much more to see and so many things to look forward to from you. I'm so grateful for this conversation.
you.
It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.